Welcome to the Space News Leading Women series. I'm Space News correspondent Debra Werner. Through this series, Space News is shining a spotlight on some of the extraordinary women at the helm of space programs and organizations. We're delving into their backgrounds, discussing their accomplishments, and highlighting their ongoing work. At prime contractors, startups, government agencies, and federally funded research and development centers, we're speaking with women in key leadership roles. I hope you'll enjoy the series. Before I jump in, I was just reading all about you, Candace. And so, first of all, should I call you Dr. Givens?
No, you should call me Candace.
Okay, great.
Thank you, though. I appreciate the ask, but no, Candace is fine. Thank you.
Okay. And the second thing is I was reading about your education. So I was also going to ask you about how well that prepared you, because mostly I read about people who did engineering.
Yes.
But you got a bachelor's in economics, a master's in systems engineering, and a PhD is in leadership, organizational change.
Organizational change and leadership. Yeah. I went back to school in 2019 and got the doctorate in organizational change and leadership. So yeah, I mean, I think my education has helped form a lot of my career and definitely supported it throughout the way. But I studied electrical engineering originally when I went to school in undergrad. And unfortunately, my father got sick, passed away, and I ended up coming back home and trying to figure out what I was going to do in the meantime. Me and my mom were trying to figure that out. And so I ended up transferring to Cal State Long Beach. I was still studying electrical engineering, but I got my first job at TRW. And so I started working and I was doing cable and harness. I was an electrical designer. I was having a great time. I was trying to take classes at night. And then next thing you know, all these years went by and I hadn't finished. And so by the time I really was like, okay, we're going to just hunker down and get this done, I had decided that I wanted to go into management. And so I thought that having kind of a blend of like all the circuit theory, all the physics that I'd had would blend very nicely with understanding a little bit more of the money side. So I ended up finishing my bachelor's in economics. But then when I decided to go to grad school, I was still very much an engineer. I was still working as a systems engineer. So when I went to LMU to get my master's in systems engineering, it just seemed like the right fit. And then if you fast forward, I'm still working. I've now become probably an executive or senior director by this time. And what was evident to me is that we always figure out the technology. We always figure out the widget, but it's very difficult to get 20,000 people to think about doing something differently. Or, Northrop's got 100,000 employees across all states in various countries. How do you get a whole sector to think about doing something differently? And so I just felt like I needed more like just skills in my toolkit to figure out how to get people to move differently. And that's how I ended up getting the doctorate in org change and leadership. Now, some people might say that's overkill, but I don't know. I think it's really great. And I learned a lot of really valuable tools for how to kind of meet people where they are, to empathize with people's backgrounds and understand kind of what change really, needs and what's required. And so all along the way, I feel like my education has just kind of augmented my work experience, if that makes sense. And so I think that's why you see kind of like a variation of different degrees.
Yeah, it's an interesting combination.
Yeah.
Another thing was I find myself looking up over and over again what OGS stands for.
Yes. So it's the OPIR and Geospatial Systems Organization. But of course, in typical aerospace fashion, we have an acronym embedded in there, right? So it's the Overhead Persistent Infrared is what OPIR stands for. And then geospatial is just kind of like everything around, think of Earth observing systems. And so I've got all that. I've got the missile warning, missile defense portfolio. We have a collection of civil space programs, inclusive of James Webb, and a lot of other assets that we fly for NASA. And so it's a very wide mesh, I think, if you will, of observing systems. So it's pretty cool.
And how many people are in that group?
Let's see, we have more of a functional organization, but when you look across the collection of programs, depending on what's going on, it can be anywhere from about 800 to 1,000 people. across the portfolio.
Yeah, and those are some very interesting programs. I've had a lot of conversations lately about missile warning, missile defense.
Yeah.
Um, um, because I know it's of great concern. Um, so what is Northrop Grumman's role in that? And what are the challenges there?
Oh, yeah. So, the threats are ever evolving. And so the good news is that Northrop Grumman has about over 60 years of history, right, in this missile warning, missile defense domain. And, not only are we flying great legacy systems like SIBRs, but when you look at, hey, about a month or so ago, we launched the HBTSS system, which is fantastic. We're working with the MDA to get that system all initialized. And then we're also working with the Space Force to work on the next gen polar system, which will replace the SIBR satellite. So there's just a wide variety of things going on in my portfolio, as well as in our partner organization in the Payload and Ground Systems organization, where they build a lot of those payloads as well. And so, it's a really great time, I think, to be in the missile warning, missile defense industry, because MDA is partnering with SDA and they're all partnering with the Space Force, and they're working together to make sure that the future architecture comes together and that there's no like overlap, and to make sure every layer does the role that it needs to, and that we, continue to put the US in a position to protect all of our assets around the globe. So it's really great.
Got it. Yes. And you play in both of those roles, the MDA and the SDA.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Because we're building a collection of satellites for Tranche 1 for the tracking layer, as well as the HBTSS asset that we just launched in February. And then we're working with Space Force as well. So we are playing a role in every government entity that's playing a role in the missile defense world.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
SDA work seems like it would be very different than the older missile warning, missile defense work.
Yeah, well, it's the instruments are still as complex, I think, as they were before, but with the technology innovations and then the decision to kind of proliferate the systems instead of having fewer quantity kind of exquisite systems, it's given us some latitude to figure out like what is the best, solution that we can provide. And so you were going more with quantity. You still get that same quality because you still have to, make sure that the data is accurate, right? But just there's more flexibility in how we provide those solutions to our customers. So it's a really exciting thing to watch how, SDA is doing their acquisitions by comparison to the Space Force. We're talking to Space Force about what's going to go on in the MEO layer and other things like that. So there's just it's nice to just see how it kind of varies, and it's great to see them staying connected and making sure that as they come to industry, they come as a united front to kind of map into that proliferated warfighter space architecture that I'm sure you've heard Dr. Tournier talk about from time to time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. On the civil space side,
Yeah.
it's impossible to ignore the James Webb Space Telescope. It's
Yes.
taking breathtaking pictures. Why is it important? Why is that program important?
James Webb is just amazing. And I love to joke and say, we built a time machine because we're looking back in time and we're doing great things. I think it's not only great because of the images and all the excitement that it's stirring in space, but when you really look beyond the images and realize how much science we're collecting, right? We're getting the science community to ask questions that they didn't even realize they needed to ask, right? And as we work with NASA to figure out what the next great observatory needs to be, right? What do we need to do on habitable worlds? It's just it's just amazing. And it's all, I think, enabled by the success of James Webb, because we're just able to have great conversations and look at the evolution from, say, Hubble images to the Webb images, and now what's next, right? As we look for other galaxies and other planets to explore, it's just, you just don't know where the possibilities are endless. And we love to say here at Northrop, right, we define possible. And I feel like James Webb just embodies all that, right? Because everything just comes together and you can see all these great images and you can just really see the science behind it as well. And figure out, what materials certain things are made out of and whether or not we can live and survive in certain environments. And so I think it's really helping to shape the next generation of space exploration as well.
Yeah, it was incredible to see, to understand how many things had to be perfectly aligned
Oh,
for
yeah.
James Webb to work the way it has.
So many firsts, right? It's a deployable segmented mirror, a 6.5 meter. It's the largest that we have, right? It's working at these temperatures that, we got cryo technology on board to make sure it stays super cooled, right? And then we've got that very complex sun shield on the other side to make sure it doesn't get too hot. It's this perfect balance, right, of everything that has to come together and work. And it's been working like a charm. So it's been great, right? To not only just see like the innovation come to light, but actually see the results of that innovation and see it pay off to really just provide the exact science that, many people, envision. Because you think about how NASA does those decadal studies, right? Like we're already thinking about what are we going to do 30 years from now? So like when you think about the brain trust that had to get together and talk about, hey, when we, deliver James Webb, what does it need to do? And then now it's like, hey, we actually did it. It's fantastic. And this is what I love about space, right? Because to me, this is where people come for all the hard stuff. It's like, okay, if you want to figure out how to do something that someone has said can't be done, call all the people that work in space because we'll figure out how to get it done. It's just a great season, I think, of innovation. And Webb is just the perfect kind of poster child, if you will, for all that innovation that often happens in space.
Another area of innovation is weather observations.
Yes.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is getting ready to planning a new generation of weather satellites. Is that an important opportunity for Northrop Grumman?
Oh, absolutely. When you look at our activities across the space sector. Not only am I flying EOS, Aqua, and Aura within my organization, which plays a great role in observing the Earth and looking for water on the planet's surface, but our my sister organization in tactical space is also building the JPSS satellites. They're building three of those. The first one they delivered in 2022. They're still working on JPS 3 and 4, which is great. And they're going to do all kinds of things to look at how, when you look at the Earth from the polar, or look at all those weather patterns, look at how we're forecasting the weather, and that'll be great. And then, even while we're building the whole system of JPSS, our partners in payload and ground are also building some of the instruments that fly on that satellite as well, right? So the microwave sounder of the ATMS, the advanced technology microwave sounder, comes out of our payload and ground organization. So when you look across Northrop, we're partnering with NASA and NOAA, like almost at every level, from the instrument level all the way up to the full system level, and then into operations and sustainment. And so that portfolio is very important to our business. And we love the partnership because it's also one of the few things we can actually talk about in the open because we do so much restricted work. And so it's really great, when we can partner on NASA and NOAA and get other people to understand, other applications of space capability.
Yes, weather is something that touches everyone.
Yeah.
And I remember the studies. Without ATMS, we wouldn't have a clue where hurricanes are headed.
Yeah, right. And I mean, the weather is changing so much. I'm in Los Angeles, right? And it has just been raining here, like what I feel like nonstop for like the last year. And it's crazy. Like the apps will tell you, hey, it's gonna start raining at 4 o'clock. And I always kind of giggle to myself, like, hey, we're enabling that technology. Like, because it used to just be like, oh, well, maybe it'll rain tomorrow. And now
Yeah.
they're like, no, at 2:20, it's going to rain or you might flood here, right? And it's this great kind of warning system so that people can plan their lives and move accordingly.
Yes, it's much more
Yeah.
specific, especially for those of us at the coast where we
Yeah.
didn't have as many observations before.
Yeah,
Um, so
absolutely.
many of the things you talk about mention this era of technological change that we're living in. Um, Maybe it always feels like it's going very fast, but it really is going very fast right now, right?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely, I agree.
So, what does that mean for Northrop Grumman? What does that mean for your organization?
Well, I'm super excited about it because I feel like we're in this like space renaissance. right? We're kind of getting this mojo back in space because now getting to space has become very affordable, right? It used to be we had to be very precise, very exquisite. Okay, we got one shot. Everybody's gonna stack on one ride and try and get there. Now it's like, hey, let's figure out what we can do. Let's get something up there. Let's get a prototype up. Let's see what, we can do. And so the biggest thing right now in my mind is trying to figure out how do we, develop the technology discriminators? How do we get them developed and deployed as quickly as possible? Because there's definitely an appetite, right, to get more prototypes up, to do more demo missions, to demonstrate the capability, and then decide how we tie that into the future architectures. And so I'm super excited about everything that's happening across space right now because there's just so much stuff going on across a wide variety of domains with a tremendous amount of customers. And it's just nice to see it kind of come together. Because I feel like when I started working in aerospace in the 90s, mid 90s, we were doing all kinds of cool stuff and we kind of hit like a lull. We were still doing cool things, don't get me wrong.
Yes.
But now I just feel like now with all of the innovations that SpaceX and that launch capability has brought to bear, we're able to like get more things up and get things up quickly and not be as worried about failure. And so I feel like we've gotten our mojo back to kind of where we were in the space race where we wanted to just get something done. Now we know we can get something done. And so now the question is how quickly can it evolve and evolve with the changes and the threats like we discussed earlier.
So I want to talk a little bit about your career. You worked at
Okay.
TRW, as you mentioned, Boeing, Virgin Orbit, and now Northrop Grumman. Did I leave
Yeah.
anything out?
No, I think you covered it. For
Okay.
sure, I have moved around. Now, the beauty of that whole journey is that, now it's Northrop, right? Like Northrop has acquired TRW. The division that I work in was formerly TRW Space and Defense. So I feel like I just came back home. But I'm really excited about how I've moved around in pursuit of certain opportunities because it's given me this beautiful perspective, right? I've gotten exposure to a lot of different approaches to a lot of different customers. And I feel like it just makes me a better leader because I have a good feel for kind of like what works and what doesn't, what has worked, how many things can be different. I feel like I'm a lot more open to a variety of solutions because I've seen things work in a variety of ways. And so I'm really excited about it. I think it's great if people can stay at one company and get the exposure and the kind of build that organic diversity of thought if you can. But it just really worked out for me where I got to kind of pop around a little bit and try a couple things and see what worked. But I'm here to stay at Northrop. I really love the culture here, love what I'm doing here, and I'm super excited to be part of the leadership team at Northrop. And I often joke with some of my mentees, right, that I had to go away to figure out like how fantastic the culture here at Northrop really is. And I'm not going anywhere. So it was
Great.
really good.
You've also been an outspoken advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. What strategies have you implemented in those areas?
Yeah, diversity, equity, inclusion is such an important part of the business, right? And even as I was studying my doctorate, we were looking at the data, right? Organizations that have a diverse leadership team, they outperform the other companies that don't have them. So the data is there. So if you are a business leader in this current environment, you've got to create a sense of belonging for your employees. You've got to make sure that you are really getting all the lift out of all of your employees. And the way to do that is to make sure that you've got diversity, equity, and inclusion in everything that you do, that you're creating this great sense of belonging. And the way that I kind of do that, whether it's me doing outreach to schools and doing guest speaking events to just foot stomp the beauty of STEM and that everybody can play a role in it. I've also been the co-chair of our sector DE&I council. I've been the representative from space on the corporate DE&I council. I'm the executive sponsor of several ERG groups. So I try and participate in every way that I can because a lot of it also, Deborah, is just me being visible, right? People understanding that there is a place for women, that there is a place for women of color. There are not many Black women in aerospace and defense. And so I try to go as many places that people will let me just to demonstrate that, hey, it's possible, right? It didn't just stop with the Katherine Johnson. Like we've been here, we've been participating, and so we should continue to do so. And so it's really exciting to be able to play the role.
have you had to overcome bias during your career?
I mean, absolutely. I think to experience bias is human. I think that as a Black woman in America, there's just going to be bias. There are going to be people who underestimate me, who assume I'm not the vice president, right, of the business unit. But I find entertainment in that now at this. Oh, I'm sorry. At this stage in my career, I think there was a time maybe earlier where I would take offense first, but now I've gotten to a point to where I use the biases to my benefit, right? And I just make sure that I do everything I can to redefine what normal looks like, to redefine what the expectations are, so that everybody that thinks they want to play a role in STEM know that they have a place where they can at least try. And so I'm trying to make sure that I continue to build the pathway. And I, refer to folks like Ursula Burns who like you gotta just show up, do your thing, and perform, and people forget about what package you happen to be in. So, yeah.
Do you have advice for people entering this field who may not fit the profile that people imagine of white male engineer?
Yeah, I say come, because the mold is not, it's not fixed. I think that when you really take the time to look at who has been contributing over the course of all these decades of innovation, there have been men, there have been women, there have been all kinds of people of color contributing to the success of all the organizations, right? And so I think that you got to do a little research, but you also just have to look for those opportunities. And I'm really proud of one of the programs that we support here at Space Park is Aeroflex, which is a partnership with a local community college, El Camino College. And so you don't even have to be an engineer necessarily. We need technicians, right? When we talk about that sun shield on James Webb, it's a lot of little precision things that have to be done. We need technicians on the floor who have just as much of a passion for what we do here in STEM to want to participate in how we put things together. And so I think that because we're always looking for ways we can do things across every layer of the organization, right? Whether it's the technicians, whoever it is, we need business people, we need supply chain people, we need engineers, of course, as well, right? And we were selected to support the White House's National Space Council workforce initiative as well, just because of the programs like Aeroflex that we've been doing and other activities that we'll try to do as best we can to get more people into the organization, but also just more people familiar with STEM, because you don't necessarily have to come and work for Northrop. I think everyone should, but if they can't come and work for Northrop, I at least just want them to come into the STEM field. And so I try to stay out there as much as I can, just advocating for all the programs, all the different avenues and ways to get in to the organization, because we definitely need a wide variety of skills and backgrounds to build these exquisite systems, these magical systems that we deliver to the government, time and time again.
Great. You've covered my questions. Was there anything else that you wanted to say?
No, I mean, I think that I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. I think it's a great time to be in space. It's a great time to be in aerospace and defense. And anybody who's interested in working in STEM, I think they should pursue that passion and just try it. Give it a shot. Don't let anybody tell you what you can't do. Just get after it and come on, join us, because we've got a lot of great work to do and there's a lot of innovation. When you look at the next 10 to 20 years in our industry, there's just a ton to do. And so we need all the help we can get. So come on and come join us.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right.